Good morning, Calvary Church.
Good morning.
I am Pastor Ray Washington, and I am so excited that all of you are here on this very special day. I know some of you have your own churches to get to, and some of you are visiting here for the very first time, so I hope you feel welcome. Isn't it exciting to see what God is doing in the Winsfield, Troy area? I mean, just think, 10 years ago, they were formulating and trying to figure out where should they be planted. They were meeting in a school. And there are a couple of people in this room that have been a part of Calvary since the very beginning. And I'll talk more about them later. But this is cool. For us even, we are looking at them 2 years ahead of us. And in 2 years, we too will celebrate 10 years. I am so just blessed to be a part of what God is doing through Calvary Church. You remember a year ago, we started this thing called Reach. And Reach was this 2-year spiritual journey where our purpose was to inspire you, encourage you to reach further. I mean, we have this ladder here, and we'll talk about that also a little bit later. But we wanted you to think about who is it God is calling you to reach. I mean, this year alone, we have reached beyond our walls, beyond ourselves, beyond our borders. I mean, we're training pastors in Africa to be able to lead their people to Christ. This is an unreached people group. They live in the Katsakara Mountains. They know nothing about what it means to be saved. And we started a mission with them 7 years ago. And now we're at the stage to where this is past September, we flew over one of our pastors to spend 10 days with them, basically training the area pastors. Because over there, the pastors literally, they accepted Jesus Christ at some meeting, but to ask them what does it mean to be saved and who is his father, they really don't even know. So it was just an event. So we felt it was our responsibility to train these pastors so that at some point they can go off into the other sections of this mountain and bring more people to Christ. We send people to the Honduras to continue to invest in Project Manuelito. We saw that on a video a couple of weeks ago. We have missions all over, not just international, we have domestic missions. We have a couple in here that heart breaks for the people in South Dakota, the Indians there, in the poorest city in the United States, that they go there and serve them. We also have people that go to Memphis. We have our youth that go to Memphis because they want to reach these inner city kids. Where you actually go to somebody's door and the parents will willfully give you their kids. You're a complete stranger. And you just say, I'm from this church, and they give you their kids and you're off with their kids. I was like, this is weird. But you know what? Thank God that we are people of God, and what we're doing is to better their lives and give them a brighter future. We just had a group come back from New Orleans. Would you believe that the people in New Orleans are still struggling with the ramifications of Hurricane Katrina? That they're still out of their homes? And you also know that we are reaching people right up under the St. Charles 370 bridge. So we have bought into this thing about reach. So much so that one of the other things we did this year, we did some upgrades at all of our campuses. We have our Avion systems behind us here, and we have new owners for this building, and they have been making improvements. I don't know if you noticed, but we have signs on our classrooms now that stick out in the hall. So when you get a chance, step into the hall and you'll see like, oh my gosh, look at that. Even mine has a sign that says, I've been here 2 years and didn't have a sign. But no, God has been doing great things here. We invested in getting an app done this year. And let me tell you what that app has done. Over 500 people a week tune in to listen to our morning messages. Here's something else that you did not know. Did you know that we have crossed every border in the world except for Antarctica? Amen. We can look at data to show that there are people in every continent except for Antarctica that's tuned in to listen to one of our services. That is unbelievable. And somebody in South America might be listening to me. I wonder if they got a Spanish translator for that. Or in Asia. But no, our heartbeat is all about reaching people for God. What excites me the most about Reach is that we get to see ordinary people do extraordinary things through the power of God. So for the next 4 weeks, what we're going to do, we're going to look at 4 ordinary single people. Not married, 4 single people that made an impact for God. And one of those people that we're going to talk about today is Barnabas. Barnabas is not well known unless you really are a true studier of the word. To most people, he's a minor character in the Bible. Yet we will see that it had not been for Barnabas, much of the New Testament wouldn't even have been written. As a matter of fact, Paul doesn't launch his ministry if not for Barnabas. His name it means the son of encouragement. Barnabas used his gift of encouragement to come and bless people to do great things for God. So through his life, we want to see the three ways that ordinary people become extraordinary. So my first point this morning is ordinary people live the extraordinary when they reach beyond themselves. Acts 4:34 and 36. If you would turn there, if you do not have a Bible or an electronic device to join me, it'll be up here on the wall. Acts 4:34 to 36 says, there were no needy people among them, because those who owned land or houses would sell them and bring the money to the apostles to give to those in need. For instance, there was Joseph, the one of the apostles nicknamed Barnabas, which means the son of encouragement. He was from the tribe of Levi and came from the island of Cyprus. Barnabas' real name was actually Joseph, and he was a Levite. And if you know much about Levites, their history was to be the assistants to the priest. But Barnabas wasn't able to be the assistants to the priest because he was part of that group of Jews that had been exiled to the island of Cyprus. So there was a little bit of an issue here because when Barnabas, Joseph, comes back from Cyprus and he wants to serve as he's supposed to as a Levite, we don't like your kind here. Barnabas' people, they were Jews, but they were Greek Jews. They didn't want them serving in the temples. Now you would think that Barnabas, being a Levite, this would cause an issue for him internally. That wait a minute, I'm a Jew by blood. I was exiled. This was not of my choosing. I was exiled. I returned, and I'm ready to serve. And you're telling me because I was part of the exiled group of people, I can't serve in the temple? I mean, think about it. He had a right to be frustrated or upset, but what we find here is that he doesn't do that. It's never penned by Luke, the writer, that he was upset about not being allowed into the temple to serve as his heritage was called for. So what you see here is that Barnabas comes in and the people of the temple are pretty much stressed out because the needs are growing. The church is growing. So if a church is growing, doesn't that mean they need more people? If a church is growing, don't they need more people to help, more volunteers?
Yeah.
Don't they need more finances to vet what it is that they're trying to do?
Yeah.
See, dying churches don't need finances. They need a resurrected Savior. We are a growing church.
Amen.
We need people and we need finances to vet what it is that we're trying to do. If we don't have either of those, we can't reach. It's harder to reach. Amen?
Amen.
Okay, so he comes, he sees what they're going through, and instead of harp on being mistreated, wrongly treated, he comes to them and he blesses them. What it really says is that he lays down a piece of property, the deed from a piece of property that he had sold at the apostles' feet. And I know they're looking like, wait a minute, what is going on? He's giving us all of this? And so then they give him the name of the son of encouragement because he wishes to bless the church. And when they see this, the church is now overwhelmed. People in the church see his great sacrifice, so much so that it starts this contagious spirit that people are giving now because they see his giving. And what do you call a guy like that but the son of encouragement? When the leaders were doing well, Barnabas cheered. When they were mourning, Barnabas was there mourning with them and encouraging them that they continue the race. When they felt defeated and tempted by sin and discouraged by the signs of the times, Barnabas was there to encourage them. He was the type of person that leaders needed by their side. As a matter of fact, I honestly wish in church we had more cheerleaders than we had members. Let me explain to you why. In football games, they have cheerleaders, right? Cheerleaders are cheering the entire time for their team, right? Win or lose, what are they doing? Cheering. If the team is getting destroyed, what are they doing? Cheering. They got the dancing, they got the pom-poms going, they are all into it because they know that what they do might have an impact. I need more cheerleaders instead of cynics. I don't need you criticizing me or the worship team. No, I need a cheerleader. I need somebody that's going to say, "Go Jesus." That's what we need. People like Barnabas. He was the champion of the leaders of the church. He urged them to continue on. And see, what we see about Barnabas is that he saw the needs of people and he moved to try to address them by reaching beyond himself. See, when you are truly one of God's children, you will put yourself in a position to not that you would give regularly. Okay, but just watch. When the baskets come, do you give what's easy, what's comfortable for you? Or when you give, is it really an act of trust? Because I think sometimes the basket goes by and you reach in your pocket and I have $1. Bam. God's like, what do you want me to do? That's not trusting me. He calls us to trust him. The money that we carry says, in God we trust. Well, let's not talk about money. What about your time? Do you trust God with your time? Do you say, I'm really tired right now, but you know what, them kids could sure use someone here to play with you. Or they could use another hand in one of the ministries in the church. Or are you just a consumer? You come, you eat, you drink, you leave. You come, you eat, you drink, you leave. That's not accomplishing anything other than making sure that our budget stays high. Because we have to feed you. I guess we have to. Because when I go to church in Africa, there's no coffee, donuts, juice, and bagel. It's 10 o'clock. Church started at 9. I guess they're going to get here. But when you're traveling 10, 15 miles by foot, you learn to appreciate the journey. Time really doesn't matter. It's not yours anyway. See, it takes a personal sacrifice for ordinary people to do the extraordinary. It takes more than it's about me attitude. It takes a sacrifice. David said one thing that he would never offer to God. He said he would never offer to God anything that didn't cost him something. Is that you? Is that what you say? Or do you say, well, I'll give God as long as it doesn't cost me something? See, God works through sacrifice. He sacrificed an animal for Adam and Eve when he saw them covering themselves up foolishly with leaves. God offered Christ as our sacrifice for our sins. Are you sacrificing anything for you? See, it's not just that Barnabas gave, but he became a leader in giving of all of his life to the promotion of the church. We have a guy here this morning that's going to be baptized. His name is Robert Folin. Robert, would you raise your hand up? Where are you at in the room? There he is, right there in the corner. And just a couple of weeks ago, Robert professed to love, know, and want to accept Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior. But what you don't know about Robert is that when Robert came to us, Robert's life was in a critical state. Robert's finances were all messed up. He was in jeopardy of being probably evicted out of his house, losing a vehicle and some other things. But you know what? Robert was blessed with an individual by the name of Paul DeBoer. Is Paul in the room? Paul is in the back of the room. Paul was part of what we did here when we did Financial Peace. He came and met with Robert. I don't believe that Paul ever gave Robert any money, but what he gave him was invaluable. He gave him his time. See, whereas Robert has a small speech impediment, so it makes it hard to listen to him. And it takes a gift of patience to listen to Robert and allow him to articulate what he's trying to get you to understand. Well, what Paul did, Paul was that guy. Paul sat knee to knee with him, listened to him, and then became an advocate for him to his bill collectors so that he could right the ship. See, had Paul not done that, Robert probably would have gotten evicted because people would have got frustrated with trying to listen to him and not understand him. And Robert stood up here 2 Sundays ago, and you remember what he said? He said, had it not been for this church, I would probably be dead.
Yes.
Let me help you understand, because you're probably thinking, well, Ray, how is that possible? I mean, he was just behind on some bills, and I mean, surely we can get that worked out. Wait a minute. If Robert can't be understood, which means there's no good communication there, so they evict him, he loses what he has, he ends up on the street. Remember, Robert has a speech impediment, right? All right, so Robert ends up on the street. Robert, would you stand up for me for just 1 second? Can you stand up for me? Okay, what do you think the chances of Robert, you have a seat. What do you think the chances of Robert making it out homeless on the street are? I see them taking advantage of him. But because of Paul giving of his time, Robert not only has financial peace and stability, Robert now has Jesus Christ.
Amen.
See, what you don't know is that Paul showed up before financial peace every week to meet with Robert. And because of that, God bless you all. Have a seat, man. Ordinary people live the extraordinary when they are reaching beyond their walls. Now, the next time we find Barnabas is in Acts chapter 9. All the while, he seems to be this background type of guy. We're introduced to the guy named Saul in Acts chapter 9. You all remember Saul. He was the first really noted Christian terrorist. He was killing us. He was going around making sure that people got stoned. He was at the stoning of Stephen. And what happens, we find out in this book that Paul meets Jesus Christ on the road to Damascus. Paul has this incredible encounter, and now he wants to live his life for Jesus Christ. But here's what happens. Paul desires to, because of his newfound faith, he wants to go to Jerusalem. Remember who who Saul was? He was a killer of Christians. He wants to go to Jerusalem. What do you think is going to happen when Saul shows up to Jerusalem with all these believers? It's not going to be, nobody's going to hear a message. It's going to be a monkey stomping good time. They are going to stomp him into a pulp if Paul shows up at Jerusalem. And Barnabas recognizes this. Can you imagine feeling like Paul? Because I think some of you can. You accepted Jesus Christ, you had your baptism, you've been through the classes, and people are still, they won't let you serve. You have friends that are still looking at you cross-eyed because they don't believe that your change is genuine. It's hard for you to find a place in the church. And so now you're becoming discouraged. You're doubting yourself. You're like, you're not really encountering Jesus? Did he really call me to ministry? Is this... I can't do this because they're not making it easy for me. So we find out Paul leaves and go away. Acts 26, Barnabas goes actually looking for Paul. That's what we find. Acts 9, verse 26. When Saul arrived in Jerusalem, he tried to meet with the other believers, but they're afraid of him. They did not believe he had truly become a believer. So Paul, discouraged, he leaves. Acts chapter 11, we see that 10 years has passed for many of the Christians who have been persecuted by Paul, and others made their escape to Phoenicia, Cyprus, and Antioch. And we see in verse 21, Acts 11, verse 21, that many people heard their testimonies and gave their lives to Christ. The first major city where disciples were first called Christians was Antioch. I'll say it again. The first time that disciples were called Christians was in Antioch. Christians never referred to one another as Christians. It was the outsiders that called them Christians. We are disciples of Jesus Christ. So that was the way the outsiders had a way to term who these followers were of the way, is what they called them. The church is spreading and is getting this kind of Gentile feel because the Gentiles are hearing the word and they're coming to know Jesus Christ and they're accepting him. But Barnabas sees something else going on. When he saw the grace of God, he started rejoicing because the Gentiles are coming to faith. He wasn't questioning their conversion. as some of the other Jews had been. Oh, they're not circumcised. They're not one of us. They haven't done this, that, and the other. And Barnabas is like, no, I'm going to encourage them. In Acts 11:23, this is what he says. When he arrived and saw this evidence of God's blessing, he was filled with joy and encouraged the believers to stay true to the Lord. What did he encourage them to do? He didn't encourage them to get circumcised? I mean, how do you encourage somebody to get circumcised? I'm just saying. I'm thankful my mom took care of that. Because now, I'm sorry, well, no, I've been this way all my life. I'm good. You gonna cut what? It wasn't long before he realized he was going to need some help. Barnabas knew that the church growing this rapidly, that they would need some help. That he would need some help promoting the gospel of Jesus Christ. Now, this is ironic because what he needed was somebody that was a Gentile. He reaches out to Paul. What's Paul's heritage again? Jewish. Paul is Jewish. I'm sorry, Saul was Jewish. So he changes his name from Saul to Paul. Paul is, guess what type of name? Jewish. A Gentile name. Paul's name is a Gentile name. Saul, that's a Jewish name. Paul is a Gentile name. So Barnabas reaches out to Paul in Acts 11:25-26. Paul is scared in Tarshish, and this is what Barnabas does. Then Barnabas went on to Tarshish to look for Saul. When he found him, he brought him back to Antioch. Both of them stayed there with the church for a full year, teaching large crowds of people. These two served together to advance God's kingdom. Now, if you continue to read the book of Acts, what you will find is something that is really peculiar. In the early books, you see Barnabas and Paul. Barnabas and Paul. Barnabas and Paul. And then at Acts 11:42, it was changed to Paul and Barnabas. Barnabas was willing to yield his leadership to this new believer, Paul. And that's rare. I mean, Barnabas was older than Paul. He was more experienced than Paul. But he saw something in Paul that no one else could see. And he wanted to put Paul before the people, and he stepped back and played the background role. You remember when John the Baptist encountered Christ? He said these words, "I must decrease so that he may increase." That's what Barnabas did. This is what people do that don't care about themselves or their name, but they want to see God's kingdom advance, so they see God's gift working in people and say, hey, I want to push you forward. So in order to do that, I'm going to take a step back so that you can shine, so the Christ in you can shine. See, in order for ordinary people to do the extraordinary, it means that we can't be afraid of trying new things and failing. Barnabas clearly wasn't concerned about what others thought about him. He refused to be afraid of failure. So what has God called you to do? What is he calling you to do? That you've been paralyzed by failure, the fear of failure. Is it speaking to a neighbor? Is it inviting a family member over for dinner? Or is it, better yet, inviting a new church attender that's been coming here a while? Have you invited them over for dinner yet so that you can get to know them? Maybe for you, it's really committing to this church because you got hurt at your last church. Maybe it's going on a mission trip that he's been calling you to do and you're afraid to because you don't know how all that will be worked out. I'm going to drop a name on our congregation. Her name is Kelly Weeks. She's endeavoring to do something that she never thought could happen. And I believe that our church is going to make sure that this young lady gets to Honduras. Let me tell you partly why I so believe that she needs to go. I don't think this is the end all for her, but I think this is the first step in her trusting God with her life beyond these borders. Kelly is a single mom. with some kids. And to think about going on a mission trip, that's a lot of moving parts. That's childcare, that's work, that's how to get off enough time, that's how to raise up enough money to go. There's a whole lot of things. Just a house. How's that going to work out, Ray? Gotta take care of that. See, Kelly is bilingual. She can speak Spanish fluent. She needs to be on that trip. Because it's messed up when all of us go, and I put myself in that pot. I had 2 years of Spanish, and I know very little. I don't need to go on that trip. Because I mess around and say something the wrong way, and get all of Calvary in trouble. Kelly, on the other hand, can go there, communicate, and be a blessing for them from our church. I hope you consider reaching out to her. Which way have you made, though? Thank you. This also means that we have to continue to reach pastors in Malawi. We have to reach people in Germany. At West tonight, one of the families there, we've sent some families and students off this year to full-time missionary ministry. Remember Sharon and Dave Mathis? They were here with us for a while. They're in Haiti. But today, they're going to be here to help us celebrate West 10 years, because that's where they were going, and then they're going back. Also, we sent another student. You remember Brooke that came, the young college girl that went to Africa? She came back this week. So that's another person who's continuing to reach beyond our borders. We had Josh Prado that was out at the Czech Republic. See, we really are serious about reaching people for God's glory. The last one, ordinary people live the extraordinary when they're reaching beyond their generation. How many of you know we're going to die? So the person that didn't raise their hand, newsflash. Okay? If you didn't raise your hand, that's a newsflash. I don't want you to necessarily get caught up in all the Left Behind series, but you just might be one of the ones that's left behind, because I'm telling you, I'm out of here the first ticket. All right? So knowing that I'm going to die means I have to give to the next generation. Those that will come after me. You would have thought that in Barnabas' life, he had done enough. He gave land, he gave his time, he gave his talents, he encouraged people. He was the first missionary. He was the first missionary for the church. He went to Cyprus, to Phoenicia, Antioch, other places in Asia with Paul. But you would have thought, at his old age, he would have said, that's enough. After returning home from a very successful missionary voyage with Paul, the church wanted Paul and Barnabas to do it again. But trouble brewed between two godly people. Acts 15, verses 36 and 40. After some time, Paul said to Barnabas, let's go back and visit each city where we have previously preached the word of the Lord to see how the new believers are doing. That's discipleship. That's doubling back. That's not just putting out on you and then dropping you too. They're coming back to make sure that you're putting into practice those very things that they taught. Barnabas agreed and wanted to take along John Mark. But Paul disagreed strongly, since John Mark had deserted them in Pamphylia and had not continued with them on their work. Their disagreement was so sharp that they separated. Barnabas took John Mark with him and sailed for Cyprus. Paul chose Silas, and he left. The believers entrusted him to the Lord's gracious care. So we see here there are more places to reach. And this John Mark that you hear, this is the writer of the Gospel of Mark. We really don't find out exactly why John Mark left. Some speculate that he was sick. Some speculate that somebody in his family was sick. Some even speculate that John Mark got cold feet about going out into the world. But what we do know is that there was a harsh, sharp disagreement between Paul and Mark. But Paul, however, felt that the mission was too important to wait for him and even allow him to come aboard. So can you imagine what that would feel like if you actually walked with Jesus Christ and then to be cast off as if unnecessary, not needed? I could imagine, because John Mark was young, he was one of the younger ones, and feeling put off by the fact that no one wants me around. But true to Barnabas' nature, he goes, finds John Mark, and encourages him. Now, could you imagine what the argument was like between Paul and Barnabas? I can see Paul standing there as if he's right, and Barnabas saying, Paul, don't you remember who came to your aid when they wanted to kill you? Who believed in you when everybody else wanted to stone you? Who gave you a chance when everybody else wanted you dead? I mean, Barnabas was the type of guy that would go to the person who was beat up, cast down, forgotten about, and encourage them to continue in the race. Because we're never told exactly what they're arguing about, we can infer that both of them were right in how they felt. But you know what the truth is? It's not about who's right. It's about looking at a person and seeing the gift of God in them and helping promote that gift. See, this is something that we as the church have a problem with, because we love to eat our own. Let a pastor, let that be found out on the news, if you really trust what the news has to say, about a pastor that was caught doing or saying something, how quickly we turn on them and tear them apart, versus turn and go find them and encourage them, which is what we're called to do. Whenever a brother or sister is in sin, Jude tells us that we're supposed to go find them and win them back into the faith.
Come
on. In 2 Timothy, we find something that's really, really odd. 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 11. Paul is giving some instructions to Timothy at Ephesus, and he says, bring Mark with you when you come, for he will be helpful to me in ministry. Bring Mark. Wait a minute, you just said you didn't want nothing to do with Mark. See, Paul had lived long enough to know how he had made some mistakes and discarded some people. How many of you discarded some people out of your life when God really didn't want you to do that? He put them in your life for a purpose. I mean, nothing about iron sharpening iron sounds comforting to me. It sounds pretty rough. If you rub two sticks of iron together, you might get sparks. So there might be a disagreement, but they are in your life to sharpen you, to make you better. Same thing goes for women. See, for us, when we talk about reaching beyond our generation, this is why we have developed the program, the True Curriculum, for teaching your children. Because we know that this curriculum teaches them the essentials of faith and more so that they can go out to their schools and be little disciples for Jesus Christ. Next week, we're having this thing called the True Family Experience. And we invite you to go out to the Mid-Rivers campus. We're going to put on a big production to walk you through exactly what happens in the True Curriculum. Some of you were here for the oil change and got to see a little bit of that, what that looks like. But we honestly believe that without us investing in our next generation, there will be no church tomorrow. See, for ordinary people to do the extraordinaries, it means that we have to be able to discern what God is doing in the lives of other people. In other words, we have to be looking with an eye, with the spirit of discernment to see, I see a gift in you. Or I prayed for you last night, and God told me this is how I am to encourage you so that you can grow in Jesus Christ. Do you know, or can you see what God is doing in the lives of a family member of yours? What about a coworker? What about a neighbor? You know, just this morning, this is hot off the presses. Just this morning, I was talking with Pat. Pat is going to school to learn how to interpret sign language. She's been blessed to meet with a young lady at 8:45 to tutor her so that she becomes good at what it is that she's doing. Pat says to me this morning, Ray, you know what? I really wish this woman could come to church. And, honestly, I think that they don't go to church because she's able to meet with me at 8:45 or in the afternoon, early part of the noon. So I don't see where it is. I don't know where she is with her faith. And I really would like to invite her to church. And I said, you know what, Pat? Maybe, just maybe, what God is doing is that he's allowing her to tutor you on how to do sign language so that when you are complete with your training, you can invite her, because she's deaf, her husband is deaf, you can invite them to church and be their interpreter. Because right now we don't have a deaf person in our congregation, and I would be remiss to even ask somebody to come because we don't have that. But just maybe that's what God is doing. I see that, I want to encourage that. See, Barnabas saw what God was doing in other people's lives. Paul completely missed it. Paul was too busy on the mission. And Barnabas had to rein him back and say, hey, we don't discount the people of God. This guy's good for us. You need to bring him back. Now, Barnabas was this ordinary type of guy. You don't read much about Barnabas outside of the book of Acts. This one is filled with ordinary people that are in the right position to do the extraordinary for God. Can you imagine if Barnabas was dying, or better yet, it was his funeral? Can you imagine somebody getting up in the room and saying, my name is Paul, and had it not been for Barnabas, I would have never preached a word, because they would have killed me. I may have gotten one epistle off before the last stone dropped. But had it not been for him, my life, I don't know where I would be. Or what about the guy that raised his hand and said, hey, my name is John Mark. Maybe some of you know me. I'm the guy that wrote the chapter, the gospel. As a matter of fact, I was the first to write mine because Matthew and Luke used mine to expound on it. Or I'm this widow. You know, we were being put out of our hut. My husband had died, and all I had was 2 young babies. And I went to the church for help. And when I went to the church for help, this guy comes in. I don't know who he is, but he lays down all of this deed for this property, for this house that he had, this land he had. And all of a sudden, the church had money to help me get through my storm. And there was rejoicing. See, that's the whole reason why we're doing Reach again. Because some of you weren't here last year when we started this journey. Some of you, this is an opportunity for you to get in on the ground floor and say, hey, Pastor Ray, I too want to reach people for Jesus. Help me do that. See, that's what it means when we reach beyond ourselves. It means when you show up here, you're not even thinking about you. You're too busy trying to see who's coming in the door so you can greet them. Give them the love of God that was shown towards you, which attracted you here in the first place. You reach beyond our walls. When you leave here, you think of ways to strategically bless others in your sphere of influence. So whether that be when you go to the store, or whether that is when you go to work, or in your neighborhood, you are constantly thinking of ways to reach others. Because you realize that you too will die someday. You're going to stand before the King, and the last thing you want to stand before him and see him weeping because you wasted your life on you. Lastly, we want to reach beyond our generation. We can always use extra people working in youth ministry, children's ministry, in the nursery. And hey, if that's not your giftedness, please don't do it. I don't want anybody kid to get killed. Okay? But if you know that you have a gift to work with kids, all we're asking for is maybe one Sunday a month. Amen. One Sunday every other month. Somebody, we could use your help. Because that's reaching into the next generation. Lastly, before we do baptism, we always want to be good stewards of what God has given us. In order for this church to continue to grow, we need people to help that happen. Believe it or not, I am not the reason this church grows. See, when you reach beyond yourself, beyond your walls and beyond your generation, you're touching lives that will say, hey man, where do you go worship? Where are you learning this at? Why do you act this way towards me? When I mistreat you, you still treat me good. What is that about? And you're able to talk to them about how Jesus Christ has touched your life.